Hello, everybody. This is Sarah Colada with Architecture Talk Tank. Second time today with another guest. Really excited for this conversation today. We've got literally the biggest architecture visualization and creative studio from Australia joining us with the CEO, Andrei Dolnikov, who will talk to us a little bit about the establishing of the studio, the different type of work and clients that they work on, and also some exciting upcoming events that he is planning for London specifically. So we'll deep dive into all of this. But just before we do, I wanted to mention to everyone we've got 5 days coming to Disrupt Symposium. Obviously, my social media is full of advertising about it, articles that we published with upcoming speakers as well as speakers from the last edition, but also newsletter and a lot of other interesting things coming up. If you haven't yet and if you're on a fence, go to www.disruptsymposium.com and get your ticket. You know that we invite top architecture practices to speak about measures of success in architecture, about the practice operations, and it's those people in leadership positions where their decisions are basically what drive the success of these practices. So it gives you that a very unique perspective into looking into the mindset of a person that runs design, technology, communications, marketing for big architecture practices and how they decide for the success of the firm. And all these blueprints, they can be implied both for smaller practices and bigger practices. Therefore, it's relevant for everyone. So if you have a business mindset and want to learn about that, I welcome you to go and get your ticket and be a part of this. And on that note, let's deep dive into this conversation. Andrei, thank you so much for joining me today. Perhaps we can start by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your studio.
Hey, great to be here, Sarah. It's
Pleasure.
very cool. So about myself, I'm Russian-born, Australian-raised, lived in Israel for a few years, lived in the US for a few years, and been all over. I'm a trained interior architect, studied at University of New South Wales in Sydney and College of Fine Arts, and got into the visualization side of things pretty early on in my career while actually working in the US. And very briefly, I literally built Binyan from my living room while still finishing my university degree, working part-time as a rabbi, living on Centrelink, which is like kind of like when you're young and don't have much of a job kind of thing, like food stamps, I guess in America they call it, but not as drastic. Building the business. From there, we started off in Sydney, then grew to Melbourne and Brisbane. We kind of went from 1 to 5 to 20 to 80 over some pretty crazy early years, which is starting 2009. I think we're about 14 years old now. And then we opened about 6 years ago in the United States, and we have a really awesome office there in Bushwick in West Williamsburg East Williamsburg, and then in London about 3 years ago as well. So now we were, and most recently in Dubai, actually. So we kind of have offices Australia, US, UK, Dubai, about 110, 120 people in the business. We work on major architectural projects, typically in the marketing phase, where we're helping the property developer or the architect to sell it, to show the vision to potential buyer stakeholders, tenants, and so forth. And we've gone from doing 3D renders or CGI, as they're called, depending which country you're in, to doing the full suite of integrated digital content, where it's CGI, film and animation, full storyboarded, live action, complex shoot, green screen, visual effects supervision. And we do in real life experiences as well, like digital experience design for sales galleries, for even lobbies of existing projects. And then we do interactive as well, so applications and various online tools to help tell the story through all this different content to the end user. And and we integrate it all together through strategy. So that's a very, very brief overview where it began and where it is now.
Excellent. I love this. And tell us about basically the general growth. How was it attributed to clients? And What sort of relationships were you developing along the way to get to that place where now you have an online, like a global presence, so to speak?
Look, I think our growth story is a combination of courage, naivety, opportunity, and like a great group of initial core brothers and sisters. That I think those ingredients and that altogether created like a bit of we call it an entrepreneurial spirit. We have these, business values. One of them is be limitless, like just whatever the next is, always the next thing we're working on. So now in the beginning, it was kind of, I don't know where I got it from, honestly, but I felt like, well, why not? I didn't have anything to lose. So I thought, well, okay, hired, a couple of people, did some of the work. Actually, one of the first things I did, I was working in a company in the United States. I think this was a bit of foreshadowing of what was to come. I hired my own boss to work for me on the side, which was I think a bit of a cheeky move, but at the time I thought it was completely normal. So I oftentimes do these things that afterwards I go, why? Or someone will tell me, you're insane for trying that. I'm like, it seemed completely normal to me at the time. So basically, to bring it down to the practical side of things, first thing is for us was there definitely was a market opportunity. We felt that early on, the quality of our work was really good. Or at least, really good for that level. It's nothing like now. And even then, maybe it was third tier in the Australian market, let's say. But we said, look, if we can bring on board a couple more people, we can get to the second tier. And then from that if we can hire more talent, okay, where's the talent? They're not as many in Sydney. Let's open an office in Melbourne. We get more clients because it gives us reason to go there and see clients. And we have more talent. So too in Brisbane and so forth. So a lot of it was to do with like understanding that if the quality is there and if you can get in front of clients, which I think is one of the things business owners don't do enough of, honestly. And it's hard, and it can even be a little bit, I don't say humiliating, because it should never be humiliating to talk about your work. Like if you love what you do and you're proud of what you do, you should be telling everybody about it. Early on, I think there's one of these aphorisms I heard someone said, they either should be talking about you or talking to you. Mm-hmm. If they're not talking about you, they should be talking to you. You should be sitting in front of them. Okay. And I made that a bit of a motto early on, even when I don't want to say our quality was, was good, but nothing like, today. I felt like, look, I'm going to meet every single person in Australia that needs to be met. And that was a big key behind it. Now, the whole time, the quality of the product has to be great. So I always had, in the beginning, it was myself and my colleague, Chris. So he would look after the quality and the team, and I would be out there, winning work, pitching, recruiting, kind of just getting the buzz going, talking to awesome senior people who are now some of the senior people in my company. They're working in other very good companies, and no one ever heard of us. So I would be on the call going like, look, I need to sell the vision. And they had to buy in and somehow take a punt on a little upstart. So at each stage, it was these kind of things. Then when we got to, we grew a lot, and there was obviously a market opportunity from Australian property market was booming then, right? It was just crazy. We just had so many projects, or we could win so many projects. It was more like higher, and then backward engineer the org structure, which I didn't even know those words. I have no business background whatsoever. My whole family's academics, PhDs, and very, very smart, but typically poor people. No, not poor like poor, but like proudly uncommercial,
Yeah.
Very Soviet sort of to be commercial is to be a capitalist, and that's evil. So I had I was kind of just figuring things. I always had a lot of coaches and mentors along the way as well. So at each stage, I was figuring out the next step. And then once we got to a certain scale and we could hire people that could help us create these structures in the business, HR, career progression, how do you manage all this stuff, wages and how do you, all these kind of things, it felt a lot more stable. And then international expansion was really just another kind of going back to the drawing board and going, okay, I know 8 people in the real estate market in New York. I'm going to get on a plane and meet those 8 people. When I meet those 8 people, I'm going to walk out of each of those meetings with 3 other people to meet. So my eight meeting trip is going to help me make a 20 meeting trip, and the 21, the 6, and I did that I think 16 times over a period of 2 years. My wife didn't divorce me or change the locks on the door, because I would be literally like 6 weeks. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit, but if I may, just like the level of intensity.
No, go for it.
So I live in Australia, right? So I would leave Australia on a Monday morning, fly to West Coast US, because you're going back in time. So arrive in the US at 6 a.m. Monday morning, having left at 9 a.m. You arrive before you leave. So that's on a flight, only flying economy. I still, unless I get points, only fly economy. We have lots of points, so yeah. And then get it, meetings back to back in LA. So all day of meetings in LA. That night, 7 p.m., red eye to New York. So New York is ahead. So you're arriving at 3 in the morning. So I would like try to sleep on that flight. Then all day of meetings in New York Monday, all day of meetings in New York, Tuesday, all day Monday. And I'm talking 8 meetings a day. I'm like every hour on the hour. I don't need to sit with a client for anyway. Then Wednesday night, fly back to Australia to be home for Friday, because I observe the Sabbath, Shabbat, and it's Friday night, and I want to be back with my family. Now I would be completely exhausted, but I did that, I'm pretty sure, 16 times in a row. I counted. At some point, I fell asleep in somebody's lobby in New York and called my wife and like, Miriam, I think I'm going to stay for the weekend. Okay. She's like, yes, you insane maniac. You should totally stay. So
I hope you were not sleeping when the client arrived.
Oh, I was. That was what happened. I was like this. So, I won the first trip, that trip of 8, we won our first project. They're one of our closest, best clients to this day. They did our new, beautiful website. We do some of our coolest projects with that creative agency, If Studios. And they are some of our greatest friends. That was on that first trip. I actually literally had no idea which way is up.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
So
who are your usual suspects then for clients?
Property developers. That's our main. Property developers, creative agencies, sales agents or brokers, as they're called in the United States. So those are and architects too. So architects do cross-refer to us, but typically they're not appointing at the marketing stage. We do a little bit of competition work. Like there's some incredible companies in our space like Mir and Beauty and the Bit who focus on competition work. So an architect comes, says, I've got a submission in 2 weeks. I need these 2 iconic images. We typically work on the marketing phase of the project, where they're doing a whole campaign that might be, engagement might be 6 months long, and the campaign can go for years, and it's a full gamut of creative content that they need.
I love this. Absolutely amazing. So tell us some tips about visualization and presenting your work for architects, since most of our listeners are architects. I'm sure they can take something out of it.
Yeah, I think about creativity and design in the image. I think a lot of the time architects, again, I know because I'm a trained one myself. I have a black top. I should tell
yeah.
Part of the club. We're taught in architecture school about the principle of design, balance, composition, planning, all these things. Now they can apply to a build. So those principles apply to a building. Similarly, those exact same principles really apply to the creation of an image. So the first thing is composition. Composition is like space planning in architecture, right? So you need to understand what's the compositional approach you take to an image graphically, so that it tells a story that you need to tell. So it's not just like the problem is these days, so many of the software tools that architects are taught to use, be they, Revit, be they SketchUp, be they Rhino, whatever, you just put in a camera and you click render, and it gives you like some sort of photoreal-ish weird thing. But that's like saying, do you want to be a award-winning architectural photographer who will come on site and like wait for the perfect time of day, for the perfect weather conditions, or move his camera around to make sure that they get just that right angle? They'll put a few things in the foreground to set the scene. Or do you want to just show up with your iPhone and just aimlessly aim and fire? You know,
Mm-hmm.
the photo is photoreal, right? Because it's by
Yeah.
definition taken by a camera, but it's not art. It's not telling the viewer anything. It's not communicating your idea. So don't think of visualization as just an aid to show what you have designed. Use it as a tool to convey the vision of why your project is unique, different, compelling, blah 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 blah. Like it's a narrative tool, not only a tool to explain how this texture looks or how big this part of the building is or what, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the first thing. It's not a technical tip, but it is. It's probably the most important thing, to start with composition. Then you really need to think about, let's say, there are maybe a tip I could give is focus on the foreground detail. That is always the thing that makes a massive difference. Because when the foreground looks, it could be a building that's standing by the side of the road, and you're positioning your camera on the other side, right? So then there's like a road, and then you're building. Now, most of the time you just put the road texture on and just, okay, it looks like concrete. You'd be surprised how important it is to make sure that foreground is really activated. So you might want to put an out of focus, motion blurred vehicle that has a little bit of sheen on it, a few fallen leaves, a little bit of dappled light. Now, an architect might think, well, that's got nothing to do with my building. It's setting the scene. It's making it. What are you trying to communicate in an image? You're trying to inspire trust within the viewer, right? Because you want them to believe in the strength of your ideas, believe in the winning, approach of your design. And that comes through a certain certain acceptance of your vision and how it fits into the overall urban context. So that foreground detail not only just makes it look better, it's helping you tell your story. Now, the kind of car you want to position there should relate to the sort of people that might occupy that building. The time of day might be related. If it's an office building, you might want to show it at this golden hour when everybody's, going home, and it's like feels activated and happy and vibey. Or if it's a beautiful resort, it might be early morning sunrise, all these little things, but the way you express them within the foreground makes a massive difference. So I mean, I have about 20 of these. I'm sure your audience might not have the time, but I'm not hard to find. I've got a lot of stuff on the internet where I talk about these things. But essentially, I would say that the key point is approach it through the skills of design that every architect has. Don't look at it as a technical exercise. Look at it as a design and creative exercise.
Sorry, some background noise here out of a sudden, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a great advice. Actually, recently I interviewed also someone who's an architectural photographer, and we deep dive a little bit into these topics. And there is certainly that difference in storytelling and approach between photography and visualization. And I think it's also extremely important to remember, what is this really for? And, you kind of mentioned that at the beginning, speaking of the different purposes, the competitions is a whole other thing, from marketing a project for sales and development. And I thought about this straight away, how architects, they're selling mostly the idea, whilst within the development, the marketing really needs to be oriented about the end user so much more so, really about the scale and the usage and the feeling lifestyle there. And I think that the buyer who's buying the property is going to be looking mostly at functionality, but also whether or not the design is cozy. And it's a whole other agenda. It's like another interest. When you are photographing your design for your website, you perhaps want to keep it more minimalistic, more poetic. Maybe scale doesn't matter so much, but all these different approaches as to what is the purpose of why you're creating this visualization, what you want to actually convey, it matters so much. And especially when you're addressing the end user, which is buyer in this case of the real estate.
Yeah, it's intention. Start off with, what is this image? Who is it for? And why are you creating it? I think a little point that you picked up on there that made me realize something, another very hot tip here: use photographic references. Any architect should have a, Pinterest, if that's still a thing, of like great architectural or just generally photographers that you're into. Use their look and feel of images as inspiration for your 3D visualizations. Don't be derivative by referencing CGIs that reference other CGIs and renders, and you're like 5 degrees away from reality. Always be grounded in reality. I think that's a very big key tip, and that's a big sort of pitfall of those that don't. You have to be passionate about photography, I think, to be a good visualizer.
I love this. This is so good. Amazing. Thank you so much. So you also do a lot of public speaking, I know. Tell us a little bit about that. So obviously it's more about contributing towards educating the community through tips like that, but also showcasing your work. And you're also involved with organizing events. So tell us a little bit about what's coming up and how people can get involved as well.
Yeah, well, I do. I mean, I find industry advocacy and sort of thought leadership, it's a bit corny, but I think it's apt title, as an important responsibility for myself as the CEO of our company, but also as one of the bigger companies around. Humble brag, we're sort of one of the bigger ones globally, full stop, not only in Australia. I really believe that our industry delivers huge value to our clients and to the way that the community at large understands the future of our cities. But I think that's somewhat not fully understood, and part of my job is to sort of evangelize and get out there. I don't know, I like to travel, I like to meet cool people, I like to get off a plane and start speaking. Not hard for me, and I've done that for Autodesk. I've done it, I don't know, everywhere. I was in Ukraine 3 weeks before the war started, did events in Kiev and Lviv, amazing people over there. Done this year, I've been in Philippines, Singapore. My colleagues are now in Indonesia, going to South America next year. I've done Las Vegas, New York, London, all over Australia. I'm probably missing some, but yeah. So I'm always out there doing something in that respect. And so a bit of a culmination of all that was a couple of years ago, the American Society of Architectural Illustrators, which are kind of the closest thing we have to an industry body within our space, invited me to be the president for 2022 of the society. They have a volunteer president that takes over 1 year at a time. So the main mandate of the president is to create a conference or an event, and you can pretty much do it wherever you want. So I said, look, let's do it in London. Why London? Very engaged design and architecture community, very engaged development community, very engaged visualization community. I would say London is almost like the home of architectural visualization. Some of the foundational firms of our space, like Hayes Davidson, Miller Hare, etc., come from there. The Boundary, these are like the greats of our industry. They're all there, and they, have this incredible legacy. So the event, I thought, okay, now let's do this. Let's do an event, but what how do we do it? There's plenty of sort of industry insider type events. I wanted to do something a little bit more client facing, a little bit more outward looking. So the theme that I decided we will approach it with is this concept of cause and effect. So that's like the name of the conference, cause and effect. So what's this idea of cause and effect? Through visualization, or let's say broader visioning of the future, we allow today's decision makers to understand the impact of their decisions, right? If I can see literally through visualization, I'm seeing a glimpse, an insight into the future, and how my actions, be I a developer, be I an architect, a visualizer, the community at large, will have, and how they will actually manifest. Then that's like seeing the effect before you even have caused it. Then it goes back and you improve the decision, i.e. the cause, and hopefully then the future manifests in a better way. Now I know that's a little bit idealistic, it's a little bit like aspirational, but if we look at what we do as simply creating pictures for just real estate developers to make more money, or architects to win architecture competitions, I mean, it's pretty shallow. I think ultimately what we all do is create these visions of the future that hopefully help improve it. But one of the things that I realized was that we really don't, and I've known this for a long time, but it really just crystallized for me this year that we really work in a very collaborative way with all these other stakeholders. So let's say the creative agencies that brand and come up with a concept for the project in terms of the way it's going to be communicated to the end user, the architects who design it, the placemakers, the filmmakers who come afterwards, developers themselves and their in-house marketing team. All of these stakeholders have such a massive impact on the way visualization actually shows the future. So I felt like, let's make this a conference that is for the visualization community and the architecture community, but really brings together the whole global village of collaborators and protagonists. So I've basically made like a crazy all-star lineup of 15 top speakers, everything from the visualizer, technologist, filmmaker, R&D, architects. So Shajay Bhushan from Zaha Hadid Architects, he's heads up their computational design and R&D side of the business. Incredible, talking about architecture in the metaverse. Mark Webben from Wonder Hatch, who's an incredible filmmaker. Peter Murray, who's sort of the doyen of the architectural visualization and placemaking space in London, founder of Word Search and the New London Architecture. Ash Thorpe, who designed the latest Batmobile in the latest Batman movie, just a super cool, inspirational guy. Joe Nazari from Dianco Creative Agency. Sergio Brodsky, who's a futurist and going to be talking about how, visioning possible future scenarios, which is really exciting. Placemaker Rebecca Mills from Frost Collective. Roger Black, who's a creative director at Ballymore, so he's the property developer himself, but actually he's the strategic person within that, and talking about his contribution to creating visions of the future. David Schwartz, who's an experienced designer from Hush in New York City, who creates digital experiences for in real life spaces. Very inspiring. And then we've got Robert Booth and John Brash speaking together from Middle East, Dubai. John from Brash Brands and Robert from Ellington about the future, what's happening in the Middle East and how that's being communicated through visual tools. And we also have a panel that's going to be about artificial intelligence, AI, and the future of design, and that's going to be headed up by Neil Leach, who's a theorist and an architect in that space, and that's me there. I think I would have skipped, if you can scroll back up, I think I skipped someone. Go up. Last thing you want to do is skip anyone. Just, over here we've got Jan Bunga from Squint Opera, who are a great colleague of ours, so fantastic visualization firm. Cobus Botha from NVIDIA, who supporting also the event, and Jen Riley, who's from Bosa Property in Vancouver, who are really visionary property developer. And Jen has a background in gaming, and she's going to be talking about gamification of the marketing process. I think I covered everybody then. Got some great sponsors. I must mention, of course, AMD and Lenovo, Chaos Group, Epic Games and ArtStation, Kitbash, Ori Clark, and Sinai Software. Scroll down, I won't forget anyone there. But we've got fantastic sponsors from vendors, software, other creative agencies and visualization firms. So anyway, it's one day. It's November 17th. I'm super excited about it. I'm nervous. I must say, this is my first event that I'm organizing. I'm not like you, Sarah, where I'm a pro at this. I'm a rank amateur, but I'm giving it a red hot go, and I think it's going to be super fun. There's a party after, and going to have a chance to network and unwind as well. So it's a 1 day back-to-back, like high octane type format, like TED Talks, and should be a lot of fun, I hope. And there's maybe a book that might come out of it. We're going to record and post the content online after, but we really want people to come, be there in the room. I think nothing like that being in person. So that's the pitch. Sorry. You're on mute.
Sorry, they were doing some. I'm in a jungle, and there's someone building out of a sudden. So strange.
Well, so I
just didn't want to have any noise. Sorry.
Didn't you have a crocodile in your pool yesterday?
I did yesterday. We had a quick call before this, and there's actually a crocodile in the pool. Actually, I didn't jump in the pool today. I'm a bit scared. So But speaking of that, I wish I was in Europe. It's a little bit far to fly for a one-day event, but I do wish you all the best. I know that a lot of people that I know are going to be there, and it's really exciting that you're bringing this to London. Long awaited, and there's indeed a big community of people, not only architects that are interested in illustration, visualization, anything to do with photography and basically representation of architecture, artwork, but also people that actually specialize in that and provide those type of services for architects. And indeed, just like with any other sort of niche in our industry, I think it's super important to bring thought leadership, to bring education. And it does feel like a step that any as respectable and established professional takes at some point in their career. It's just giving back, that simple gesture of giving back, educating the community, connecting, creating unforgettable experiences. And I love the fact that you're doing it, although in London, even though you live in Australia. So it's great contribution. I'm looking forward to see the results of it, and even anything else that comes from it, like book or presentations, future webinars, whatever that brings. So looking forward to it. Just tell us again the website where people need to go to purchase tickets for it.
Yeah. So you go to asai.org. That's on the homepage as the event, and there's a link to an Eventbrite buy tickets link, which is right at the bottom. So that's where you get tickets. November 17th, there's an exhibition launch because there's also a architectural visualization competition that goes hand in hand with the event, which is I'm going to be announcing the winners on the day, and exhibition launch is the night before on the 16th. There's tickets for that as well. So asai.org.
Sounds amazing. The link is also dropped in a video here, guys. So go check it out, get your tickets, and looking forward to it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrei. And also, before we wrap up, tell the audience where they can find you, perhaps a website, your personal website, your company website, and maybe a social media that people can follow you on.
So our website, the company website, that's the easiest sort of in terms of seeing the work, is binyanstudios.com. Our Instagram is is just Binyan Studios, one word. Quite a good following there. Myself, I'm easiest to be found on LinkedIn, just my name. There's not many, and I have in my descriptor, I think something like, founder and CEO of Binyan, Hasidic rabbi, husband and father. I think I'm the only Andrei Dolnikov with that descriptor. So not hard to find. My email's on there, my number's on there. I make myself extremely easy to contact. So just reach out. I'll see you somewhere, because I travel a lot, and I'm very passionate about, engaging with anybody who is related to our field or not, and also mentoring. I know that's very big for you in terms of supporting architects in the business side of things. I think many of my experiences, the good decisions and the mistakes and the learning opportunities, are very applicable from business to business. So I'm, available for that as well. Just informally, whatever. It's not how I make a living, but anybody has any advice, I'll always make time.
I love this. And I certainly, what stuck to me is that you have a Vespa, which is also mentioned in your bio.
Yeah, I do.
I'm a big Vespa lover, actually.
Yeah, I love it. It's the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrei, for joining. Thank you for sharing all this incredible knowledge and also promoting your event. And before we go, guys, the Disrupt Symposium is coming up 1st to the 3rd of November, 3 days this time, 15 speakers, really amazing practices joining. And we will be streaming live at 7 p.m. Central European Time. The website, I'm just dropping it here to get your tickets. We actually have a +1 offer. So if you get a ticket, you can actually bring a friend or a colleague with you. And we're doing that only to grow a family. This is our 2nd edition. We had a really great success the first time round, and this time we just want to make it bigger and promote it more. So make sure you're there. Incredible speakers talking about practice operations and the measure of success in architecture, which truly is a topic of taboo in our industry. And therefore, what is really important for us at the event is also to give a lot of room for networking, for Q&As, and an ability to actually interact with our speakers. Therefore, after every presentation, you have an opportunity to raise your hand, ask a question, and have a little conversation with our speakers. This is really the sort of collaborative approach we want to promote through Disrupt Symposium, and every single person, every ticket holder has an opportunity to interact like this with one another and our speakers. So make sure you're there. Thank you so much, Audrey, again. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.